It's Sunday evening, the 1st of February, and a big warm welcome to the Totally Football Show. We're gathered here to sum up all the weekend's action in the Premier League. We're Daniel Storey on our big screen. Hello to you, Daniel.
Good evening, James.
Good evening. Duncan Alexander's here in the studio. Hi, Duncan.
Hello,
nice
James.
to see you on a Sunday evening.
Weekend action. Best weekend of the season? Maybe.
Maybe so. Colin Millar's here, which makes it a pretty good one. Hi, Colin.
Hi, James. Yeah, weekend of comebacks, wasn't it? A lot of 2-0 deficits overturned and then overturned again. So, yeah.
Wow. It was a thrilling weekend. Hello to you, by the way, if you're watching us on YouTube. Hello to us equally if you're getting this as a kind of polished podcast Monday morning or thereafter. It was a record-breaking weekend in so many ways. And not least, the game that we just finished watching, the Spurs-Man City 2-2 draw at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, which saw City 2-0 up at half-time and not winning for the first time in, what was it, almost 8 years. What a crazy game. Before we go any further, let's just talk a little bit about the Spurs comeback, about Solanke, about what happened to City, what this means for the title race. Daniel, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a complete collapse from City. It's not the first time they've done this. I went back and looked at it because it was one of those things that sort of flagged in my mind. They've lost 9 second halves this season, City, which to some extent that's them having a commanding lead and then coasting, but it's also the same amount of second half defeats as Burnley. And it has cost them recently. It cost them against Brighton, it cost them against Chelsea, it's cost them against Spurs, and it almost did against Leeds when they came back to 2-2 and City won it late. And against Fulham when Fulham almost came back from a ludicrous scoreline to draw 5-5. So there's just something about them losing control of games that they weren't doing when they were winning the league. I did think Spurs were much better second half. I think Conor Gallagher's energy helps, as did Dominic Solanke's outrageous second goal. But City of old just don't let that sort of lead slip. They just snuff out, control the game. And the comparison with Arsenal, 2-0 up and under a bit of pressure at Leeds early in the second half on Saturday, and then eventually get through that and win 4-0 is probably quite bleak for City supporters.
Arsenal, who are now 6 points clear of Pep's side. City letting the game go or Spurs snatching it back from them? What do you think, Colin?
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? And obviously we talk about the Premier League and we're always saying about how it's sort of increasingly defined by physicality and by set pieces and all this other stuff. And City just don't seem to be particularly strong in any of those metrics. And Daniel talked about the second half drop off. I mean, that maybe speaks to that a little bit, just not being physically quite there. Obviously, there's a demanding schedule there. Obviously, Rodri, who I thought was pretty poor in this game again, and he was so important to them pre his ACL injury and everything else, as we know. And it does just feel like a record now that City just don't have the identity that we always just assumed they did. They're a very good team in patches, but they're not able to sustain that through a game, and you're sort of just left wondering, what are they at the minute?
The strange thing was about the first half, though, was that Spurs looked like they had even less physicality than City did. And the first half ended with City 2-0 up, almost without trying. And Sky running a montage of comatose Spurs fans slumped in despair. The curious thing being, and this I think had fed into that first half performance, was that a lot of the Spurs fans didn't want them to win anyway because Arsenal.
Yeah, but I don't think it was like it was a couple of years ago when it was a real issue, because that was right at the end of the season and it was a game that had a direct impact on the title race. Whereas I think you could tell that the Spurs fans were... The Spurs being bad at home again was a bigger issue than, potentially Arsenal increasing their lead at the top of the table. So it just felt depressing. The vibe was bleak. I mean, we know that 2-0 can occasionally, very occasionally, be a dangerous lead in football. We know this, right?
How many times this weekend?
Yeah, a few, yeah. Things happen. But I don't think anyone saw that coming in that game. That was... and to Colin's point, I think this is... City have changed to become a more reactive, more vertical team, which is fine. That suits a lot of their players, a lot of their new signings. But when you're set up like that, you can lose control of games. The City 3, 4, 5 years ago would have just controlled that game, and Tottenham wouldn't have got the ball in the second half. But they don't do that anymore, and this is what can happen.
What do you think this means for Spurs, Daniel? Was this the fruit of some Thomas Frank wizardry at half-time, or was it just one of those games when the players rediscovered some fire in themselves?
Yeah, there was some professional pride on show for sure. I think Gallagher really helps in terms of setting that energy in midfield. I think the wind back to sort of October, November, and the first deep concerns about Frank's Tottenham were those kind of double pivot, two midfielders just passing the ball slowly to each other and Spurs never really getting up the pitch. I think Gallagher changes that. He adds a bit more kind of dynamism between midfield and attack and links play without just having to go out to a winger, which, given the injuries they've got, those wingers aren't available anyway. But really, I think it just prolongs everybody's unhappiness at the situation, because I don't think it's the start of the great Thomas Frank comeback era. I just think it's Tottenham a match closer to at least securing Premier League safety, I suppose, to securing some pride. That they're obviously still decent in Europe, and that's where the focus is going to be. I don't think they will go down for kind of hopeful in some corners talk of that. But it's I don't think it doesn't really answer anything, because I do think that was more down to City letting them in.
Decent in Europe, top 4 in Europe, but a very valuable point in this in the Premier League, because they are now 6 off the bottom 3, and the next 4 games, even 5 if you look at them in the Premier League, Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Arsenal, and your lively looking Fulham, who have a good record against Spurs. So you could quite easily see them dropping a bunch of points in those.
But the thing is as well that I think the conditions of this game, and it's Gary Neville on commentary called it like it was like a charity match at the end of the first half,
yeah.
and that was the sort of atmosphere there. That it was just like players didn't seem like they were intense at all. It wasn't like a Premier League match at all. But I think Thomas Frank, the one thing that he has been consistently good at as a head coach at this level is being able to react to things, in the sense that when things are going wrong, that's, there can be a bit of a rallying cry, and I think players can get behind that for these individual one-off matches. We've talked about City's flaws, but Tottenham deserve a lot of credit in this specific match itself. Obviously, Dominic Solanke getting those 2 goals. The second one, which was an incredible finish. I don't know what was going through his mind. Maybe instinct kicks in, and you're trying to get some sort of contact on it to flick it over as a back-heeled finish over.
So Conor Gallagher's gone on this kind of marauding raid down the right wing and crosses it, and it's a little bit behind him. I guess you could make the comparison with the Giroud goal for Arsenal. Certainly that was one made in commentary. And he reaches a foot out behind him and kind of flicks it sideways.
Yeah,
with
sort
his
of sideways and angled towards the goal, and it kind of, loops up, and Donnarumma gets his fingers to it. But, I mean, Tottenham are the biggest overperformers on XG in the Premier League this season. Almost 10 goals more than, the chances. And, yeah, when you do that sort of thing can go in. So,
crikey.
Fair play.
But they don't score a lot, so their XG must be incredibly low.
Yeah, it's 25, which is the 4th lowest. So only lower. The only teams lower are Wolves, Sunderland, and Burnley. So
does anyone see a match like this as lighting a fire under Tottenham Hotspur? Not so much. What about for City then? What do you think the implications are for Pep's outfit?
Well, I think
they're. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think they will pretty soon pivot to Champions League. They are not good enough.
You're calling the title race. You're calling the title race.
I did a few weeks ago. I just don't think, Arsenal psychodrama aside, I just don't think there's anyone close to them in terms of consistency in game. City are a kind of roll the dice team at the moment in game, and you can't do that and win a league. 1 win in 6 in the Premier League. Erling Haaland has scored 1 penalty in the Premier League since Christmas. Didn't have a good game here at all. Sorry, Duncan, I think I interrupted you. Yeah, just to back up Daniel's point, I think there's a tendency with title races to, like this time last week when Arsenal dropped points and the teams beneath them had caught them up, to kind of extrapolate and assume the teams chasing will just win all their games. Right. Whereas this weekend we've seen that's very much not the case.
Literally didn't happen.
Yeah. And Arsenal have basically got a 2-mistake advantage now. Yeah. And they have had most of their difficult games.
But it also just quickly goes to show that when we're talking about Arsenal's drop points, and we sort of bring it back to this sort of mentality issue in a way, because of sort of previous, we're like, that's sort of inbuilt into how we view that team, whereas you wouldn't think that naturally about Manchester City. You'd had Arsenal blowing a 2-0 lead against Tottenham like today, you'd be like, well, that team's just not
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
in that
No,
mental.
we spoke on the pod on Thursday about the kind of football half-life where it takes people quite a long time to kind of accept new realities with teams. And I think City have still, people still expect them to just grind teams down and come back and win titles. And I don't think that this team is in that frame of mind, really.
No. Although there is a Man City team that is in that frame of mind. It's the Man City women's team who were 5-1 winners over the WSL champions Chelsea today, Sunday, to put them 11 points clear at the top of the table, which is the second biggest league in WSL history at this point. How much was
the second biggest ever? I
Oh,
think.
ever.
And the biggest one was the end of last season when Chelsea won by 12. So they've got a pretty good chance of beating that record.
Wow. All right. Well, back to the Premier League. And let's check up on the other results then on Matchday 24. So Matchday 24, we saw Spurs in that remarkable 2-2 draw with Man City. Arsenal, 4-0 winners Saturday at Leeds, thus go 6 points clear of Pep Guardiola's side, and 7 of Aston Villa, because they lost 1-0 at home to 10-man Brentford earlier on Sunday. Also on Sunday, Manchester United won their third game of 3 under Michael Carrick, but only after surviving a mighty Fulham comeback in what turned out to be a thrilling 3-2. And Nottingham Forest drew a less than thrilling 1-1 affair with Crystal Palace. Neco Williams conceding a penalty after doing a Luis Suarez against Ghana and getting a red card for it, after which neither team attempted a shot on target for the rest of the game. Saturday's other games, meanwhile, there were come-from-behind wins for 2 big teams. Chelsea, from 2 goals down to beat West Ham 3-2. First time they've done that, Chelsea, to win a league game since 1987. 87, wow. Liverpool also conceded early, then put 4 past Newcastle to end their 5-game winless run in the Premier League, while elsewhere, Bournemouth got their first away win since August in a 2-0 victory at Wolves, and Everton snatched a point away at Brighton, 1-1 with the last kick of the game. That's 1 win in 11 Premier League matches now for the Seagulls. 1 Premier League match still remains to be played, and that is Sunderland hosting Burnley on Monday night. The Black Cats, you'll recall, still unbeaten at home, while the Clarets are on their worst ever Premier League run. 14 matches without victory. Crikey. We will next up take a look at what Arsenal did, I suppose. Do you want to do that, or do you want to head back to Sunday's other games? Maybe we should do Sunday's other games because we've done City. Yeah. Let's move next to the early games on Sunday. Will you be having a bit of comms here, Charlie?
Yeah, where are we starting? Man United?
Yes.
Sesko.
Yeah, Tesco checkout. Anyway, right. One day professional broadcasters will learn how to speak clearly into a microphone, says Stephen Hooper, 4369. A little bit of shade thrown at somebody there. Let's make sure our microphones are at least professional, even if the rest of our performance isn't. Colin, perhaps yours might want to be a little bit more aligned with your speak hole. I think that bit needs to come up a bit because it's very much the side bit that we're meant to be talking. I feel that angle is too. If you were to, yeah, oh yeah, that'll do it.
Okay.
Thanks, Stephen Hooper, for helping out. Takanada says, "Big up." Let's talk about Manchester United's resurgence. We just heard a bit of it there. The remarkable Benjamin Sesko capping a particularly remarkable 3-2 victory over Fulham at Old Trafford, says Taka Hanada. The anti-United media, they're everywhere, aren't they? Yeah, the anti-United media always revel in our downfall. So let's talk about Carrick bringing us back. Taka Hanada and other Man United fans, absolutely spot on. I must admit that only today I was packing up my big box of Man United banter because we've had some good years with it, but I fear those days may be over. Is it so, Daniel?
They never leave you. No, never actually take them to the storage unit. Just put them in a cupboard in the spare room because we will reach for it again. They are really good at the moment because they're a team that's playing with freedom and playing like they think they can win games at any point. This was a really weird game in that all week I think the kind of Man United narrative has been Manchester United are going to have to learn to break down a low block at home. You know, it's going to be really hard. It's going to, take all of their effort. And actually it was a really quite open game, particularly in the second half when Manchester United would probably have liked to have closed it down and they weren't particularly good at that. and Fulham are a good team. They're a team that has options on the bench now. They're a team that's investing, and they've got sort of surprise attacking players. You don't really, particularly the wingers, you don't really know whether they're going to go inside or outside, and they can hurt you. And they did hurt Manchester United, but they, for the second game in a row, United get pegged back and then produce this moment in which, it just felt like it wouldn't have happened under the previous manager. So kind of all power to Michael Carrick for that, and all shade and shame on Ruben Amorim for us making us all believe it was not possible under Manchester United. Because of course it is. They've got really good players.
And it's in their DNA as well. It's now Amorim's longest win streak equalled by Carrick, and it only took 3 games to do it. And it's just 2 wins from haircut for that fellow. Extraordinary, isn't it? United, 3 wins in a row. They've had less possession than their opponents in all 3 of those matches. So much happened in this game. You were watching of the 3. You followed this one, Colin. Some fantastic goals.
Yeah, Kevin Screamer, which would have been the ultimate Catherine O'Hara tribute after her sad passing on Friday, of course.
How nice.
But that was a great goal from Fulham. It was a really good comeback from Fulham to get back into this. So United had a 2-goal lead thanks to Casemiro header and a really powerful finish from Matheus Cunha. They were playing quite well, but Fulham were playing very well too. And as Daniel says, this was an open game. I think Fulham are the sort of bellwether team for the Premier League. They're the team who you can always sort of expect will put in a sort of 6, 7 out of 10 performance every game. You know what you're going to get from them, and if you're not on it, they'll punish you. They got back into this game with 2 late goals. Obviously, the Kevin Screamer followed on from the Raul Jimenez penalty. And from that point on, it's
record-breaking penalty.
Oh, okay.
He's now scored 12 out of 12, which means he's overtaken Yaya Touré's long-held 11 out of 11 perfect record in the Premier League.
And he had that stuttered run-up that a lot of people...
Maybe he was thinking about the record as he ran in, because he certainly had time to think about it as he stopped and then got going, and then had another little stop. But yeah.
And the Benjamin Sesko then with a really sort of... He found space in the box,
right.
And a really sort of clever touch, take it away from the defender. And
Bruno Fernandes, the
assist.
The way he burnt... fellow, who was it? Bassi.
Calvin Bassi. Yeah, that's right.
The way he burnt past Bassi
to
find space for the cross. It was a brilliant goal and a fabulous result for Man United. I do recall Casemiro, who had the brace in the first half. Sorry, not the brace, but he scored one.
Headed him in front, yeah.
The football had left him. It's come back, has it?
I think he's been really, really good this season. Obviously, he's at an age and a wage that Manchester United couldn't really sustain for a new contract. I think it's the right decision for him to leave at the end of the season, but I do think he will need replacing, because I think it's pretty unanimous that United needed a central midfielder anyway, in terms of ball carrying and sort of progressing through the pitch a little bit more. I think they'll probably need 2 now. I think that's definitely going to be the area they focus on this summer. But I think it was just so important after Saturday's results, and we'll go on to talk about Chelsea and Liverpool winning, but that did put pressure on. And as I said, Fulham are that team that will test you in a way that maybe other teams won't. I mean, you beat City, you beat Arsenal, now you beat the team who started the day in 7th. Like, these are tough fixtures.
Yeah.
And it's just that momentum that they've got now is quite important, I think.
Yeah, and we're pretty likely now that the top 5 will get Champions League football next season, and it looks increasingly like a 6-way race for that. So a nice bit of 5th or 6th place drama incoming.
Man United got Tottenham at Old Trafford next weekend. If they do make the top 5, who do you see missing out, by the way, of your Chelseas and your Liverpools? Or your Villas, actually. Could it be Villa? After what happened to them today at home to Brentford. Were you watching this one, Duncan?
I was, yeah.
So explain to us. They go a goal up.
Well, first of all...
Sorry, they don't go a goal up. Sorry, Duncan, explain to us.
So, first of all, Brentford went down to 10 men.
Right.
Kevin Schade sent off. It was a red card, but it was...
What did he do?
Him and Matty Cash came together in a sort of, tackle / clearance out of play, tangled together, and he kind of just put his boot into Matty Cash's, what can we call it? Cash point?
Midriff.
Yeah.
Cash point.
ATM.
Nice.
GBH, but it wasn't GBH. But yeah, I mean, it was one of those that it is a red card, but it wasn't a vicious assault or anything. So I mean, Villa must have thought, great, 10 men we're facing. But then Brentford took the lead. Dango Tara with a amazing... There's a lot of roof of the net finishes this weekend, and this might be the finest one. And it was kind of very Brentford. You know, they kind of, even with 10 men, they defended completely valiantly. And yeah, just a lot of energy. Igor Thiago sort of dropping back for most of the second half as a sort of midfield enforcer, which he looked like he absolutely loved doing. So sort of a a temporary Joe Linton scenario. But Villa thought they'd equalised. Tammy Abraham tapping home after Jadon Sancho's shot had been saved.
But they hadn't, had they?
They hadn't, because, and I believe this isn't allowed under IFAB, the ball had gone out of play down in Villa's defensive corner, the other end of the pitch.
20 seconds before.
Yeah, so what happened, Douglas Luiz basically tried to keep the ball in play with his thigh, but you can see it went out of play.
Can you, though?
You can. And then there's a swift counter from Villa, goes up the pitch.
Right.
Now, I can understand why Villa fans think it's unfair given the incident was so far away, but it does feel like if it's the sort of goal that if it's against your team and it's allowed, you'd be equally as apoplectic that it hadn't been disallowed.
Do you think there should be a time limit on how far back you can re-officiate a game? Why stop there? Could you not go back? Daniel has a view on
this. I mean, I wouldn't go back to 1888, but you could, yeah.
Daniel.
I just hopefully IFAB will come together and agree that we need to have VAR on throw-ins as well as corners, because it just opens up the floodgates. If you're going to look at corners, you have to look at every single throw-in as well, surely. I can't wait for that version of football where the ball is in play for 2.5 minutes in a 90. I completely agree with Duncan, by the way, about... It's one of those that you're fuming about if it goes against you, and if it's the other way around, you're fuming about as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can use it as an argument that VAR shouldn't be in football, but if it is, you can't not use it in that situation. That'd
be an interesting debate to have. We must schedule that.
I mean, and there's a lot of Villa fans who are sort of saying, you know, maybe theorising conspiracies and stuff. But I mean, Villa Park is the only ground, to my knowledge, where Hawkeye broke down, where Sheffield United were denied a goal during the first game in Project Restart. So these things happen, but it did go out of play.
It did go out of play. Probably it did, yeah. Villa's XG, by the way, what was it in this game against 10-man Brentford? Because they were the big XG overperformers. Has this brought things back in line?
They got 2.13. They had 27 shots.
27.
But only 5 of them on target. They had more than 300 passes in the second half. If you didn't see the game, you can imagine how it went. 10-man Brentford just clearing, Villa getting the ball back. But, you know, they didn't really... There was a few long shots. It kind of showed, you know, obviously they've had a lot of long-range goals this season, but this game sort of showed that they don't always go in. So, but it's a frustrating one because that's 2 home defeats in a row now.
Right. It's also 2 defeats to Brentford, and they got knocked out of the Carabao Cup by them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brentford, you know, they're up to 7th now.
Wow.
Or maintained up in and around. I mean, they're the kind of the best of the rest if we think that the top 6 are sort of pulling away a little bit.
Well, it's funny as well how these things work. That we were all talking about Brentford's away form. 1 win in 8. It wasn't great, but they've won 3 of their last 4 away now. Whereas Villa, who were on that 8 or 9 game winning run at home, have now lost 2 league games at home without scoring a goal. I think the bigger issue for Villa is the injuries that they've had. John McGinn and Yuri Tielemans are out for 6 to 8 weeks. That's added to Boubacar Kamara.
6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Right,
yeah, so to clarify. I know,
I'm hearing at the moment about some quite lengthy injuries, not all of which we can talk about. But anyway, sorry.
Boubacar Kamara out for the season too. Obviously, they signed Douglas Luiz, re-signed Douglas Luiz to slightly readdress that, but they've got players in now that it's going to be a really demanding second half of the season. They play a lot of football. I think they play at quite a high intensity. Players like Tammy Abraham as well, who has had injury issues, for him to come in and make an impact straight away you have to manage these players very carefully. I know Unai Emery's very good at that. I just think Villa's season, it's because it's been so good for so long that each one of these results feels that little bit more painful than it would in a normal season. So it's just about managing those expectations. But I think they just need to have one eye over their shoulder at the minute.
Okay. One team with an eye on their shoulder, and Nottingham Forest, of course, who've been perched precariously a short distance from the bottom three for a while now. But how important was Sunday's 1-1 draw with Crystal Palace, achieved with only 10 men? Daniel, you were there to witness it.
Yeah, I mean, if you'd have offered Forest fans gaining a point on West Ham this weekend at half-time in both games, they would have obviously snapped your hand off, with West Ham winning 2-0 at Chelsea and Forest being a man down and 1-1 against Palace. They were, I have to say, they were magnificent the second half against Palace, who were poor, but Forest had more shots than Palace in the second half and a higher XG than them, despite having one fewer men. Morgan Gibbs-White was phenomenal in terms of his work rate without the ball. He sort of played as a second striker today, which is, I think, the first time that Sean Dyche has done that. And I think he does it mainly because his pressing is so good. He just never stops running. He was absolutely knackered for the last 10 minutes, but carried on running. So, yeah, I mean, it was a difficult day for Forest. Obviously, Nico Williams will be suspended for his handball on the line at the Leeds game. Callum Hudson-Odoi came off at half-time in a sling. Matt Sells came off at half-time for Angus Gunn to come on. Forest have signed Stefan Ortega today, so he will presumably come into the team for the game at Leeds. But yeah, there's a few injuries that aren't great there. But yeah, Forest will be... It's a weird old game in that I spoke to some Palace fans after the match and they were like, well, that's fine. We're a point further clear of West Ham as well, and our team was decimated. But they were so poor in the second, just moving the ball really slowly despite playing 10 men and making it quite easy for Forest. But yes, we all move a point further clear of West Ham thanks to Chelsea, which I presume is what we'll talk about soon.
Very, very soon.
And Daniel, obviously this result, it's kind of like a good result for everyone in a way, because obviously Forest didn't lose with that red card in the first half. Palace stopped the rot, so to speak. It's an okay result for them. And obviously West Ham and Leeds probably look at this and think, well, nobody's pulled away. And then you're looking at the fixtures that are coming up, and you know, with West Ham playing Burnley next weekend, that's a massive chance for that gap to really close. And with Leeds still being in that mix, and with the fourth game coming up, so it's starting to get quite interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's as you say, it's Leeds Forest on Friday night. So that's before. I assume that again, both teams, as with today, Leeds fans will want to win that because 6 of their last 7 home games are winnable. The other being Manchester City. Who knows? But yeah, Forest fans would take a point there. Again, move a point further clear of West Ham. I think for all this noise about Palace getting dragged in and Spurs maybe getting dragged in, etc., I think it probably still does come down to just Leeds, Forest and West Ham. And everybody, you know, Leeds and Forest are literally just supporting everybody who West Ham play, because that gap is 6 points plus goal difference now.
We'll hear about who is playing West Ham this weekend and Arsenal's match and loads of other stuff next on this Totally Football Show. Totally Football Show European Edition will be out with you on Tuesday morning. But actually, if you're hungry, if that's the appropriate word, for some Seb, Stafford Bloor, James Horncastle, maybe some Polbulars and a soup son of myself, then you can... Oh, and Tom Williams as well, of course, doing the French stuff. We've got our reaction to the ever so exciting Champions League playoff round draw, which is up now either in YouTube or podcast format. So do try that. Anyway, we'll be back on Tuesday morning talking about all sorts of stuff, and not least the XG busting Como Atalanta game. We won't get into that right now. Let me just quote. Let's see. Let me just quote QB6828, who says, Colin Millar looks nothing like I imagined. I imagined him to be a dark, brooding figure. Colin. QB6828 also says, I like how he remains silent and then suddenly destroys everyone in the quiz and then retreats again. Do you do that, Colin? Did you destroy everyone in the quiz?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. Well, the Reservoir Duck says, Duncan, where did you get your jumper? Where?
I think it's a company called Folk.
Oh, I know Folk.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah, in Lamb's Conduit Street and online.
Yeah. Scottish, I think.
Is that right?
I believe so.
Okay, then. And, well, loads of love for you as well, Daniel. But no one commenting on your knitwear. Somebody did ask me to say woof. So, I mean, I don't really need an invitation for that. Let's get on with the show, though, eh? Arsenal, 6 points clear or 7, depending upon your reference point. a match on Saturday which saw them go to Ellen Road and, despite their crippling anxiety, win 4-0 against inform Leeds. They're having fun. Ever since Mikel Arteta said, all right, lads, let's have fun for the rest of the season, the shackles are off. Who wants to talk about the this brilliant performance? A textbook away control, Amy Lawrence called it, from the Gunners.
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, first 15 minutes were fairly cagey, but yes, Arsenal took the lead from a set piece, like a recycled set piece, put back in, and Zubimendi, great header, looked relieved after what he did against Manchester United last weekend. And then shortly before half-time, it was 2-0 from a corner. We initially thought it was an own goal by Carl Darlow, but a day later, the organisation formerly known as the Dubious Goals Panel decided that...
What are they called now?
Goal Accreditation Panel.
That's a shame, isn't it?
Dubious. Anything with the word dubious in it is good, unless it's food. Unless it's on a menu, I wouldn't go down that route. But I mean, it's fair enough because, as we know, when goals are decided, it's the shot on target. Now, a corner doesn't. It's one of those Schrodinger's set piece things where a corner it doesn't become a shot unless it becomes a goal, essentially.
Okay.
So, in statistical terms. So, but I mean, Madueke arrowed it in, and it was go. If Carl Darlow and Dominic Calvert-Lewin hadn't have been where they were, it would have gone straight in. So I think it's fair enough.
Okay. We should talk about Madueke, who won his place in the starting lineup owing to Bukayo Saka going off injured in the warm-up, and what a huge performance he put in.
Yeah, it was great. And I mean, you know, him playing when Bukayo Saka is injured is essentially why Arsenal bought him, and he justified that. I mean, he plays with a lot more pace than Saka. His end product's not as consistent, but when he plays like he did on Saturday, really good. And then, 2 more goals in the second half, and I enjoyed these two because if you imagine in your head the sort of goal Arsenal bought Gyökeres for, and the sort of goal Gabriel Jesus has made his sort of calling card in his career, that was spot on. I mean, Gyökeres, shortly after having a sort of one-on-one and getting caught up and the shot blocked, this time he got on the end of a cross and sort of bundled it in, despite being sort of manhandled. It was the sort of strength and 6-yard prowess that he was bought for, really. So that ticked that box. And then Jesus sort of...
Or Jesus. Well, so I saw the highlights of this on the Match the Days, Follow Your Team, or indeed any team you fancy, digital offering. And I was struck by the fact that Guy Mowbray, I think it was, addresses him as Jesus 4 or 5 times. And I'm not sure if it's a Sunderland accent thing or if there's some new knowledge about Gabriel Jesus'... Danny, have you ever know? Is that news to you?
No, we need to ask Natalie Jedra, obviously.
I'm pretty sure that as a Brazilian... I mean, I'm reasonably confident that... But anyway, I mean, he's done it for a reason. I do beg your pardon because you were making a more valid point. But anyway, he scored a goal.
Yeah, I mean, he kind of got the ball in the area, dummied to go back, then pushed it forward and then just tucked it in. It was a lovely finish. And Finosh, past Lodz United. So, I mean, we don't know how much that Arteta's kind of, everyone's sitting down and let's enjoy the run-in. I mean, Declan Rice made that point after the game and said, we're top of the league, we finished top of the Champions League, we're in the Carabao Cup semi-finals, we're still in the Cup, FA Cup. So, I think it's been, after the psychodrama of last weekend, it's been a solid week for Arsenal.
Okay. And a solid performance from Kai Havertz as well, selected ahead of Martin Odegaard because he's tougher. I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell, isn't it? Yeah, there you go. Gyökeres got 2 goals in 2 games this week, or 4 in 6. I think that's right. Yeah. So that's coming good for Arsenal ahead of Tuesday night's encounter with Chelsea, which will be the second leg of their Carabao Cup semi-final. Colin?
Just very quickly on this game, there's been 6 scorelines in the Premier League this season where teams won by 4 or more goals, and 2 of those 6 have been Arsenal against Leeds.
Okay.
So this really has been the most one-sided fixture this year.
Which raises the question, how tough a test was this for Arsenal? But given Leeds' recent form, it was.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think Leeds didn't get the grips with this game at all. I think their main route was to get the ball long to Calvert-Lewin for him to hold the ball up, bring others into play. But Arsenal just stopped that at source with their pressing. Just quickly back on Noni Madueke, one thing he's really good at is winning corners in the sense that he has that sort of directness in the wings and defenders just get a bit jittery and like, let's just play it out. Let's not take the risk of a straight run through.
I mean, the point is Arsenal obviously have inverted wide players, and traditionally you would show them onto their weaker foot, but then that's how Arsenal get a lot of corners. So, I mean, the point's been made numerous times this season, but the reason Arsenal get a lot of set pieces is because they're very good in open play.
That's how you do it. Chelsea will be their next opponents in the Carabao Cup semi-final second leg. Chelsea, who were involved in an extraordinary match Saturday tea time. Daniel, I imagine you were watching as they first went 2-0 down to West Ham and then came storming back to take all 3 points. Booed off at the break, much like their London neighbours Spurs, in fact, Chelsea were. But after a raft of half-time substitutions from, reactive Liam Rossenia, there they were, Chelsea, a team transformed.
Yeah, this was sort of reverse hold my beer, because this was a more astonishing comeback based on the pattern of play in the first half than Spurs Man City, I think. I mean, Chelsea are obviously a stronger team than West Ham and have been far better than them this season, but West Ham were all over them first half. It should have been 3-0, could even have been 4 at half time. And Chelsea, there was obviously a thing when Maresca was there, and one of the reported reasons he fell out with the club was about this need to rotate for medical reasons to keep players fresh. And in Liam Rossinia's early weeks, he seems to have taken that advice on board because there's been a huge amount of rotation in each game. But the reality is that Chelsea's backup players aren't good enough for what they want this season, and maybe aren't good enough full time. I don't know. Like Liam Delap is nowhere near as good as João Pedro. Joro Hato really struggled with Jared Bowen first half. Malo Gusto was getting forward but then getting caught out behind, and Reece James came on for him, and the difference was just enormous. I mean, Alejandro Garnacho was, one of the worst individual halves of football you could see in the Premier League from him. And then Pedro Neto came on and wasn't even that good, but by not being that good was way better than Garnacho. Chelsea, they got it done. And Robert Sanchez at half-time had a bit of a tete-a-tete with supporters and kind of said, stop booing us backers. And at full-time was obviously all smiles. It's an extraordinary turnaround, because the first half was absolutely appalling, and a better team than West Ham, I guess, would make that matter at Stamford Bridge. Nuno is struggling to do the Forest thing of closing out games. They are allowing points to slip from Leeds left, right and centre. I think I'm right in saying that his whole time at Forest, they never once allowed a 2-goal lead to slip, and it's already happened twice at West Ham so far this season, against Bournemouth and here. They can't really afford that. They've got a Burnley away next weekend, and I think that's pretty... It's sort of must win, because you look at West Ham's fixtures after that, and the next 5 or 6 are pretty tough. And then you're into the last 6-7 games of the season. So, that Burnley-West Ham game next weekend is absolutely massive.
All right.
I think, sorry, James, I think one of the most interesting things about West Ham at the minute is that on the 15th of January, they appointed Paco Gemes as a first-team coach under Nuno. Now, Paco Gemes might not be familiar for a lot of Premier League fans, but in Spanish football, he was a really dogmatic figure, probably most well known from managing Rayo Vallecano about 10, 12 years ago. And essentially his football is attack, no half measures, loves being possession-based, high up the pitch, high defensive line, everything else. Almost the antithesis, actually, of Nuno Espirito Santo. And the fact that pretty much for his entire career, I think he has been a first-team manager, to now sort of have that, not a subservient position, but where he's not taking all the decisions, but sort of feeding into a wider machine. I find that dynamic really interesting. So the thing that kind of sums him up was that in 2013, when he was the Rayo Vallecano manager, his Rayo Vallecano played Barcelona, and they had more possession than Barcelona, and it was the first time in 316 matches that Barcelona didn't have more than 50% of the ball, but Rayo lost 4-0. And he was sort of like, after that, I'm so proud of the players, and it's such an amazing achievement, but it also sums up the kind of the underlying flaw of that style of management. So I'm just really interested in
that kind of philosophy evident in their play now, Colin?
Well, since he's come in, they won at Tottenham. They beat Sunderland 3-1, 3 first half goals. They've performed their first 50, 55 minutes of this, they were fantastic. They probably should have been more than 2 goals up. And you see a lot of the elements within that. Now, when Chelsea got their first goal back, and I wasn't in the stadium, but you knew that the feel in that stadium was that we're going to do this. You could feel West Ham just retreating further back. Nuno brought on Max Kilman to replace one of the two, I think it was Pablo, one of the 2 forwards. So they changed formation. They went to a back 3. And Daniel referenced the points dropped this season. It's 18 now in the Premier League from winning positions at a joint high with Bournemouth. So there's a real issue there. And again, I'm not sure. That's why I find this so interesting, is how much of that is coming from Nuno, how much of that is coming from his coaches, these in-game decisions, the starting decisions and formation, because they were just so positive and they played with so much belief. But it dissipated so quickly whenever they did concede that first goal. So, yeah, all credit to Chelsea. But West Ham, I would be a little bit worried if I was one of those teams, 15th, 16th, 17th, that 1 or 2 more positive results for West Ham could make things quite close.
Well, we saw that they had been threatening that, but the last couple of weekends have been heartbreaking almost for them. Each time they thought they were going to get something, or maybe catch up a little bit on Forest
last weekend. Yeah. So, just on anyone who's watched their team be 2-0 down in a game has made sort of like, they've said at half time, if we can get a goal back by X, then we can. And I would posit that the timing of Chelsea's goals is the perfect 3-2 comeback. It's 57 is João Pedro to make it 2-1. And it's like, okay, we've got more than half an hour left. And then Cucurella scores on 70. So that's like, we've got 20 minutes, we can win this.
Yeah.
And then Enzo on 90+2. And then you get a lovely melee and red card
So what
on 90+11.
happened in the melee at the end?
I'm going to take that.
Oh yeah, so this is a really interesting scenario, because West Ham pushing for the late equaliser deep and out of time, and Mark Cucurella sort of shepherds the ball out of play, but sort of crawling along the ground, almost using his head and his body just to shepherd it out. And Adama Traore's appealing for the decision, and then Cucurella sort of gets up, and they have Adam Traore he just completely throws Cucurella out of the way to go with the linesman. And then all these players begin to rush in, and you just completely lose track of what's happening, because there's so many sort of head-to-heads and players not quite going for each other, but in that
as
situation.
You say, the power that Traore gets on Cucurella is astonishing. He just disappears like someone's throwing a soft toy into the distance. But then after he's done that, he turns his back, and João Pedro gives him a big shove. To which Traore turns round, and there's a very good slowed down edit of this on social media. And you can see as he marches towards João Pedro, his face sort of goes like, when you're in, you might not know, but if you've ever been in a pub car park and you kind of, and it was very much that sort of vibe. But then, as Colin says, it was then kicking off all over the shop. And Todibo was the one deemed to have overstepped the mark.
Right. He'll miss next weekend's must-win game against Burnley. Daniel, sorry, you were very patiently wanting to chip in on that.
Just to kind of chime in with Colin's point on the Nuno shutting up shop thing and bringing on Max Kilman. It's something that he did a lot at Forest last season. He would have Milenkovic and Murillo as centre-backs who are really good, and when Forest went ahead, he would bring on Murato and go to a back 3 to see it out. And between mid-October and mid-February, Forest took the lead in 14 league games and won 12 of them. It just, nobody could basically stop that happening. The exceptions were Liverpool at home when they took the league and drew 1-1, who were obviously champions, and Newcastle where they lost. But it's just not working. Colin mentioned the 18 points dropped from winning positions. 15 of them have been under Nuno. Now that's partly because they're better under Nuno, therefore they're taking the lead more. But yeah, it's not good enough. I think 8 Premier League matches they've led under him, and they've only won 2 of them. They were not in a position when he came in that they could do that and hope to keep pace. They've actually been really lucky that Forest and Leeds have not really, they've kind of drawn their way to bigger gaps rather than extending it, because, they're going to need to kick on soon.
All right. Well, one last thing on this game. Jaws 226 says Rossegna effect is on at Chelsea. 6 wins out of 7, 5 wins on the bounce. He's for real?
The results are really good.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of caveats to that, right? I mean, there's
the fact that he has to change his lineup because it was wrong in the first
But
place.
it was almost like the Saturday's game was it was almost not lucky, but because it was so bad in the first half, he had to make so many changes. Had they been 1 goal behind, I'm not sure that.
Do you feel that as a manager coming into a squad halfway through a season, he should get a bit more slack for making mistakes with his starting lineup?
I think he definitely should, but I also think that, and I think it's kind of been referenced, that there's like a little bit of an image issue in the sense that should he really be Chelsea manager? Does he give off the vibes of a Chelsea manager?
I think that's. Do you think?
I wouldn't say it's the glasses.
What's wrong with glasses? Just wants to see the game, doesn't he? I do think football is the world's most popular luck-based sport, and being lucky as a manager is very important. And you know,
Napoleon had something to say about that, didn't he?
Yeah, when he was manager of Lens.
I mean, you said about, shouldn't we give him some more slack for coming mid-season? Yes, but also the whole reason that they appointed internally was presumably because they wanted a guy who would have already done the research on that squad and was being lined up for this job. So, yeah.
All right, then. Chelsea facing Arsenal midweek in the Carabao Cup semi-final second legs. The other one with Arsenal, was it 3-2 up from the first leg of that? The other one has Man City 2-0 up against Newcastle as the Magpies head to the Etihad on what I'm guessing will be Wednesday. Newcastle, who will arrive there fresh from a bit of a spanking at Anfield late on Saturday, 4-1. That one finished to Liverpool. They got their 4. Newcastle couldn't muster the traditional 3, but that was extraordinarily Arne Slot's side first Premier League win of this calendar year. Daniel, were you impressed?
I wasn't impressed for the first half an hour. I was really impressed by the comeback. I was impressed by the cohesion between Florian Wirtz and Hugo Ekitike, which I think if you strip out all of the bad stuff from Liverpool's season, is probably the reason to most feel positive about this Liverpool team with or without Arne Slot. It's its manager, because Ekitike is he's the most dangerous striker in the Premier League this season, in that he's scored with the highest percentage of his shots and highest percentage of shots on target of everyone who's taken, I think, 40 or more shots. There's like 25 of those players, and Ekitike is top. And Florian Wirtz, we're seeing him the last few weeks that he feels more and more comfortable and he's creating chances. It was still quite haphazard at 0-0 and 0-1. I thought Newcastle were the better team for the first half hour, but they just have periods of games in Newcastle where, almost like we said about City earlier, like you could take 5-minute segments of the same team in the same game and not quite believe that they were on the same day, because they just seem to lose control of matches and then make mistakes. We've said a lot about, I think, Newcastle have now taken 5 points from a possible 24 against the current top 6 this season, which is not only not good enough, but it's also a lot worse than last season. And I just cannot quite work out what's happening with them. But Liverpool, by the end were full value of it. And just a shout out for Ibrahima Konate, who has had a difficult season on the pitch, has had a horrible week with the death of his father. And when he scored in that last minute and Alisson runs 80 yards up to go and celebrate him, you do kind of think like, oh yeah, some of this is nonsense and some of this is what really matters. And him scoring that goal and all 10 teammates around him is what matters.
Very nice indeed. Both teams will be facing Man City for the next fixture. Chelsea, as mentioned, in the Carabao Cup, and Liverpool in the league. Is that right? I thought Liverpool... That is right, apparently. Yep. Yeah, they are. Colin.
If I could just say 2 very quick things about this game. First of all, Eddie Howe at Newcastle. I've noticed a lot of their fans are becoming increasingly frustrated with the lack of in-game changes to the system, and they were just so open in this match. The midfield was bypassed time and time again on the counter-attack and on the transition. They didn't have an answer to it, and they didn't correct it in the second half either, which I found a bit surprising. But the other thing was that in this first half, I think the reason why Newcastle did so well was they had so many set pieces, and the ball was out of play and disrupted so much in this half that this was actually recorded, that there was a 50-minute half, so there was 5 minutes of added time at the end of the half. The ball was in play for 22 minutes of 50. So, I mean, my maths isn't great, but that's quite a bit less than 50%.
Why would Arsenal do this?
It's one of those things that each free kick, each set piece, each throw-in, there's just such a delay. And when you sort of see it mapped out in that way, because you kind of just think this does feel like
it's becoming a turn-based sport as opposed to... Interesting.
A bit shy of Fair by looking at, so it's on their list.
Yeah. There you go. Anyway, a big win for Liverpool and a disappointment for Newcastle after that fine performance away at the Parc des Princes midweek. Kennedy taking the lead in this match through Anthony Gordon.
I mean, I just thought, obviously, Ekitike scored. And
Blue raspberries at the fans as well.
he did. Florian Wirtz is in really good form now. We saw Xavi Simons play well for Spurs on Sunday. We saw Gyökeres score. We saw Sesko score. And I do think that people underestimate how long it takes a lot of players to get up to speed in the Premier League. And, we're in another transfer window now, and a lot of those players are, getting on with it.
Okay, we've already lost our Man United banter for the foreseeable future. Now you want to strip our hot takes away.
Don't worry, there'll be new signings this summer who are pretty underwhelming in October, and everyone can say words like fraud and recruitment teams over and over again, and it's good.
Excellent. Clip that up, please, producer Charlie. What else happened this weekend? Wolves lost at home to Bournemouth, and Brighton drew with Everton. Oof, that was heartbreaking for the Seagulls, who've only had one win in their last 11 matches. 97th minute it was when Beto tucked away that loose ball. And, which of these two games would you like to comment on, if either, Daniel?
A word for David Moyes' brilliant post-match interview. So for those who didn't see, obviously Beto scores last kick of the game, and Moyes does a sort of it's a sort of giggly Jose Mourinho Porto Man United back in the day. Just sort of holding up his hands and giggling. Like, I'd say he had the look of someone who's just won the postcode lottery. He was just sort of like giggling to himself running down a street, and was then booked for leaving his technical area. And in the post-match interview, was asked about it and just said, "Yeah, I'll do it. I'll bloody do it again. I wish I'd done a knee slide, but my legs can't hack it," which I thought was a nice touch. I'm not a bootlicker, but I generally am someone who's sort of, those are the rules, you got to deal with it. But managers leave their technical area all the time. I kind of feel like it was slightly joyless to book him for just running down the touchline.
The game had finished by this point anyway. It was literally the last kick of the game. Duncan, you're making the point, though, that the officials are particularly stern on goal celebrations at the Amex.
Well, late January 2025, funny how the fixture computer always comes up with the same order, but anyway, that's a subject for another time. Ilian Ndiaye got booked for imitating a seagull.
Imitating a seagull.
So,
I mean, those are the rules.
I just want to see what Everton come up with next season.
Yeah.
In late January, because that's when it'll be.
The disrespect. Crikey. Anyway, a 1-1 draw. Pascal Gross, by the way, with his first goal, you probably saw since returning to Brighton. And Beto with the 97th minute leveller on his birthday, which was nice. Wolves Bournemouth, meanwhile, not so nice for the home side and their slim remaining chances of a Premier League survival. Bournemouth with another goal from teenager Elia Junior Krupi, who I'm guessing, Colin, you're a big fan of. I'm not sure why, but I feel like he might be right up your street.
Groupie, are you?
I'm a huge groupie. Yes, it was a great finish. It was,
his shooting.
It's just it's instinctive. And I think it's that kind of. It's obviously the skill set that they have, but the sort of fearlessness of trying these things.
Well, I just think French. I mean, look at Ekitike's toe poke finish as well. I mean, what are they teaching down there in France? Finishing is the answer.
Also in Brazil, what are they teaching in Brazil? Because teenager Ryan, on his Bournemouth debut, setting up the second goal in nice fashion.
Yeah, I mean, again, Bournemouth lose Antoine Semenyo, but they've picked up 7 points in the 3 games since that. So Andoni Areola is again kind of just made a couple of tweaks, and they look quite good again. Albeit the Wolves missed a lot of chances in this game. You see Wolves points total and everything else. That's such a terrible season.
How much?
I'll be honest, but I dream about it, because if they don't get 12 or more, I'm finished.
I think even 11, Duncan.
Yeah.
11, you'd be slightly off the hook, but they're still on 8? Is it 8 still?
Yeah, it's just one win away. It's fine.
14 games is
it's
a third of a season.
Daniel, there you go. You're going to be preparing a bumper edition of The Score for us on Monday morning. Any particularly cogent takes in there that we haven't aired so far on the show that you'd like to just throw in?
Well, just on Brighton, there is now, I think, we can officially say a sort of movement from a section of supporters against Fabian Hürzeler. At first he was sort of getting grief for not making changes in game. Now he's sort of getting grief because there seems to be this thing where he brings on James Milner late in games, who's quickly heading towards the Premier League appearance record. Slightly unfortunately this weekend, Milner was brought on 90 minutes, which then meant that there was an extra 30 seconds of stoppage time in which Everton scored their equaliser, which didn't go down particularly well with supporters. And Brighton have got Palace at home next weekend, which is their, goes without saying, their big home game of the season. I think if they lost that, I think
Bridges for 3 points.
Yeah, I think
Nice.
Hurts comes under serious pressure.
Wow. For Palace, that's back-to-back grudge derbies, of course, after Forest this weekend. Pineapple Tree Trunk questioning Hürzeler's performance in similar fashion. Given that they aren't in Europe, they've been really underwhelming this season. Well, there you go.
Well, they're just 2 points above Tottenham Hotspur. And Tottenham have had all those European games, and as you said, Brighton haven't. So it's that league performance, it's not great. They're just not winning enough games. It's
They're just
obviously
drawing
to say.
too many. They're the only team in double figures for draws. They've lost the same amount as Liverpool. I think it's hard. I think a few little tweaks and they could be a lot higher. Patience.
All right then, Duncan. All right then. We will finish off there then for tonight's Totally Football Show. Many thanks for you if you joined us on YouTube and have sent in little nudges and comments and that sort of thing. Many thanks to Daniel for offering a lot more than that, all the way from his. And Daniel and Duncan, who made it in, and Colin as well, and to Jake and producer Charlie in the booth. We've got a European flavoured edition coming up on Tuesday, as you'll recall. So perhaps you'll join us for that. And then Thursday back with a regular show and all sorts of other stuff afterwards. For now, from all of us here, it's goodbye.